Thank you all for coming to the first lecture in this year's Last Lecture series, sponsored by the Academic Affairs Committee of Student Government and the Mendoza College of Business. This evening, Dr. Carolyn Woo will be speaking to us in what may be her last lecture at the University of Notre Dame as the Dean of the Mendoza College of Business. And yet, even though she will be sorely missed by the entire Notre Dame community, she will continue to embody the mantra of the Mendoza College of Business and the spirit of the University of Notre Dame in committing herself to society and the common good as the new CEO of Catholic Relief Services, which is the official international humanitarian agency of the Catholic community that serves needs in more than 100 countries. Through her leadership as the Dean of the Mendoza College of Business, our school rose to the top of our nation's rankings in undergraduate business education, but Dean Woo reminds us that this honor is a responsibility, and she herself is fulfilling our commitment to the world by practicing what she teaches, and not just asking more of business, but really doing more for business. Dr. Carolyn Woo has served as the Dean of the Mendoza College of Business since 1997, joining us from Purdue University. Her research focuses on strategy, entrepreneurship, and organizational systems. She lectures regularly on individual integrity, ethical systems, and corporate citizenship. She has a dazzling list of awards, honorary degrees, and prestigious distinctions, and has written a number of influential publications and books, and is without a doubt one of the most accomplished individuals that I have come across. Dr. Woo is married to David E. Bartkus, and they have two sons, Ryan and Justin, both of whom are Notre Dame graduates. Without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Carolyn Woo, our beloved Dean of the Mendoza College of Business.
This is truly humbling, I just have to say, and deeply moving, and a night that I would remember very, very much. Those people who know me know that I seldom write my speeches, except when it's really, really important, and when I also don't want to speak for too long. And I actually do have my written comments. But I think the first thing that we should do, as we always do at Notre Dame, is to begin with a prayer. And so let's just this minute, just pause for a minute, collect ourselves, and put ourselves in the presence of God. God assured us that when 2 or 3 are gathered in His name, He is with us. So let this be a moment where we be mindful of the presence of God in this gathering. On this night, when I have so much to give thanks for, I especially ask for God's blessings on all those who are gathered here and the others who make up my Notre Dame family. For we are not strangers who just happen to collide into each other by random chance. We are friends, we're families, we're all God's children, we're created by God, and willed by God to share our journey together, to love and to be loved, to laugh and to cry together, to join our gifts and our hearts so that we can bring about God's bounty in this land of the living, here and now. We make this prayer to God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and through our Blessed Lady, the patron of this university. Amen. Those who know me also know that I cry. But anyway, I just have a few special people to introduce. First of all is my husband. We've been married for 32 years. And whatever I do, he's always been extremely supportive since the time I knew him when I was 18 years old. So that's David Bartkus, who is there. And as he would recall, when I was a freshman, he was doing his master's. The first memory he had of me is when I disagree at a meeting, when as a freshman I said, "Excuse me, but I don't agree." So also with us is my son, Justin Barkis, the second of two sons. And Justin is a Notre Dame grad too, from theology in 1110, and now working on his master's in theology, and that's Justin. And Justin is here to keep me honest. Of all my colleagues, I could introduce everyone because I'm so grateful to them, but symbolizing one of them is a very good friend, Bill Nichols. Bill, would you please stand? So I just want to say I started with Bill Nichols. He was the associate dean. I started in July of 97, but in April of 97, he came to Purdue to visit with me and brought me problems before I was even on the payroll. And the problem he brought at that point was that the MBA program had a copy machine which only did one copy at a time. Do we think we could afford to buy a faster moving copy machines? Did you recall that? And the other story that we would now tell is my first time as dean. We were welcoming the first MBA class that I had. It was on a Sunday, and morning we would be having breakfast with our new class. And in the South Bend Tribune, there was a terrible story about the Mendoza College of Business. So my first orientation with the MBA students, and in those days we were very under-enrolled. We need 130 students to fill a class, and we only had 98, first of all. And we needed to, welcome students with gusto and make them feel like what an incredible place they have come to. And that morning on the front cover of the South Bend Tribune, we had this horrible story, an unfair story, and not a truthful story about the Mendoza College. The first thing I did was I gathered my colleagues, I hardly knew them, Bill Nichols and Ed Truback in my office, and the first thing I said was, I have to cry first. So I did, and I said, now I could deal with the problem. And the wonderful thing is I talk about these problems, but the truth of the matter is that they've always been with me. It's a team where together we work a lot of different issues. So that's why I just want to introduce Bill, and just also want to say it symbolizes the culture within this college, and that is a group of people who really work together for the good of our students, for the reputation of our college. They are like brothers. I trust them with everything they said. I mean, it's always a group of people who give opinions because they think that that is the best for the university, not so much for themselves. Before I start any sort of words of wisdom, this is a night that I could do this, and I'm going to do this, and it's to say that I really hate the experience of going through rankings. Truth be known, I actually, when Business Week wanted to do the undergraduate ranking, the undergraduate business school ranking, I said, we are not participating. We have participated in MBA rankings and all of the other rankings, and they are a pain. And they create so much stress. They require a lot of data entry. And so Business Week called and said, we would like, to do undergraduate business rankings. And I said, no, we're not going to do it. All we do is help them sell magazines and put ourselves into a tizzy, still for another ranking. So I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't know who convinced me. One of the staff, as we were talking, and they basically said, Carolyn, actually it's much more trouble to explain to people why we're not on the rankings, than to do the rankings. So just go ahead and do the rankings. So I said, okay, it's true, that's life. We did the rankings, and we came in at number 3. That was 7 years ago. So this number 1 thing is not like a surprise. We have been 3-7, 3-2, 1-1. But despite how well we do, and we have done well in the various rankings, the MBA programs and so on, the experience of rankings, every year it came out, Bill is all nerves, I am all nerves. It's not a, and they all cluster around the computer waiting for it to be announced, and I have to actually get away from the office. So, by the way, in a workshop that I went to, and it says it's important to use visual aids, otherwise people don't remember. So I want to show you, this is the voodoo doll for rankings. And it's true, one time I turned to my colleague Bill Gangloff and I said, I just really dislike rankings. I just really need a voodoo doll where I could poke pins at it, And it was just sort of like a fun thing to do. A funny thing to do, it says. So Bill actually made this rankings doll, voodoo doll that puts down rankings, and it has these little metal numbers. They are little metal buttons with numbers on it. And if I really someday, that day couldn't stand it, I'm supposed to be able to poke pins. I hope that you know that I've never poked pins in it. But just to give you some sense of sort of the Mendoza College and the fun that we have to, and why this is a wonderful community, I think is sort of, you could get a sense from my voodoo doll, my ranking doll. And I'm not going to take this with me. I'm going to leave this in the office because I think it's always a reminder of sort of sometimes the stresses that we go through. There got to be sort of a humorous way of dealing with it too. So that's my confession, I guess, to say done with rankings, and I don't think I would miss that. So going back, one of my colleagues, Roger Wong, said, can you be brief? I just have one advice for you. Can you be brief? So I'm going to try to practice what Roger tells me. I'm going to just sort of capture a number of things I want to share with you in just 5 points. I think the last lecture is supposed to be lessons that you yourself really learn. What really worked for me in the end as I go through life? What are sort of the lessons if I have to pass on to students? The most important things to remember, what are those things? So I want to just kind of touch on 5 things. The first is adversity, is to not be afraid of adversity, is to not be afraid of responsibility, and to be able to step into the adversity, face it, and step up to responsibility. I choose to say that is because I think right now the economic environment worries everyone. I'm sure you sit there and some of you may be anxious. You may think about sort of the various investments and sacrifices that parents have made. I think this is a generation where you've seen parents change jobs, lose jobs, and so on. When I was growing up, I was in a pretty comfortable family. My father was a naval architect, marine engineer, except that my father had a few issues. He had a drinking issue, he had a health issue, he had financial issues, and he loved to gamble. And so even when I was very young, I kind of have a sense of not having security and thinking of how would my parents turn out, just because things were always so tenuous. And my father was a big gambler. He was not a small gambler. And I love him dearly, actually, despite the fact that there are these flaws. So even when I was very young, I had a sense that our situation was a bit tentative. It was a bit tenuous. And I also decided that my way of responding to that was to go to school. Most Chinese girls in those days, they marry in order to sort of get situated and be able to have a livelihood living. That's what women, when there are not many options, think about marriage. And I thought, no, I don't want my marriage to be about convenience or about marrying is my way of sort of solving problems. I thought marriage needed to be better than that, and I also knew that I didn't have the temperament to just sort of subjugate myself. It just doesn't sound like me, and it's really not me. And I really also wanted to go overseas to study. I wanted to come to the US. I was educated by American nuns, but I didn't have any money. My father didn't have any money. And he also didn't give me permission to go. I was one of 4 daughters. The 2 sons would be able to go, but not the daughters. And so I actually collected some money. I collected money from my 2 older siblings out of 3. out of 4 older siblings. One paid for my tuition, the other paid for my residence hall. And I still remember my tuition was $800 a semester at Purdue University. And my nanny also kicked in some of her money. I actually have a nanny. And so I had exactly enough money for 1 year. I actually didn't know what would happen after 1 year. I was just grateful to have 1 year. And as an 18-year-old, I packed 2 suitcases, including blankets, long underwear, and clutched my chest x-ray to go through immigration as a foreign student. I tell this story is because that first year, because I thought I only had 1 year, I tried to sign up for as many credit hours as possible. I would sign up for 24 credit hours, and in the end up with 21. Along the way, I dropped Russian, couldn't quite learn Russian. And I dropped film appreciation the next semester because I couldn't stay awake for these silent movies. And you are allowed 3 times to go watch this and then write your assignment. And every time I go in, the lights turn out and I would fall asleep. And today is still the case. I don't get a lot of sleep, so I fall asleep very easily. So I had to drop film appreciation because I had no homework to present. But I tell the story to a lot of people. 21 hours, credit hours just sound like a lot of work. But if you were in a situation where they say you could only have 1 go around, if you only have 1 year to get as much under your belt as possible, it doesn't sound like a lot of work. It sounds so much like, I wish I had more hours. And I studied everything. Just like I said, I even had Russian, I even had a film appreciation in between all the other things. And I took theology courses because Notre Dame was offering theology courses at Purdue. I signed up for every student activity. I didn't know what they were. So I, along the way, because of what I signed up, attended the Jewish B'nai B'rith services because I didn't know what it was. And I signed up for the Gay Alliance because I thought it was a happy club. There are these tables with student activities. You just go leave your name on, these sign-up sheets and they call you, and if it fits your schedule, you go. So, I just went around and it sounded good. I have no idea. So I signed up for this. But I tell the story about that first year and about adversity is because I think that was such a gift. Because from then on, I never looked at work as work. I was able to get a scholarship that covered the rest of my years. And I was given 3 years, and I thought, can I finish in another 2 years, and could I fit a master's degree in? So I never thought like, wow, 15 hours, I have to go to class. It was like, fitting in the more the better. And as a result, I never took any opportunities for granted. Whoever gave me an opportunity, I was just really grateful. And also, as a foreign student, you're not allowed to work a lot because there are visa issues. So even work became a privilege. So I had all sorts of work. I tutored football players. I served as a receptionist at the dorms. I sorted out mail. I did all sorts of things. But this is the whole idea about not being afraid of adversity. I think is to sort of, when you're in the middle of it, it's very difficult. But work your way into that diversity and work your way out of that adversity. And don't be afraid of responsibilities. I could imagine, I remember at 18 years old, I had no idea how to sort of take care of anybody. But I just thought that, the next 3 or 4 years, my job is to really get a good education, and then the next step will follow. So that's just my first point. I think adversity really shapes us, and it's really a gift in its own ways. But it could only be a gift because of the second point, and that is to have faith. I think if we feel like everything that we have to do, it depends on us, we could never do it. And I would say there are times when you feel very alone in this. And I now have lived long enough and have gone through enough situations to know that that feeling, you may feel like you're all alone, but you really are not. I think God is really with us. My first year at Purdue, because I was so far away from home, and also because the first friend I ever made was in the Newman Center, the Catholic Center, I started going to daily Mass. And it was an incredible sense of peace and kind of comfort. The day I was to find out about my scholarship, and I didn't think I would get it because there's not many scholarships for international undergraduate students. And there were only 2. And so I didn't think I would qualify. The foreign student office would be open till 12, and then they're closed for lunch. I get out of class at 11:20. 11:30 was daily Mass, and it will go till 12, and I wouldn't be able to make it over to the foreign student office. And I remember having to make a choice. Would I go to Mass, or would I go and get the results? And I talked to myself, and I said, if I make it, finding out an hour later would be okay. If I don't make it, I better have made peace with God first. So I remember sitting there. I went to 11:30 Mass. I had an hour from 12 to 1. And during that hour, I had a long talk with God. And it was basically about, why is this so hard? Why do I not have it better? Why? And they were not, why is this so good? It was, why do I have to work so hard at it? And then I went to the international office, and I found out I had a scholarship. It completely changed my life. But this is, so people would say that I have a deep faith. And I do. It's because from that moment on, I knew I was not alone. That God was with me. I understood that there very often you could only do your part. And there's nothing. You couldn't see what you can do beyond that part. And more than once, I know that God comes through. I told my business advisory counselor I only cry when I have a sense of gratitude. And it's that deep sense, it's that deep sense of gratitude that actually I'm surprised that people don't cry more often when you think about your blessings. And when you think about why you with these blessings. And that, out of whatever it is, something comes through. And I would say, even today, the fact that I'm going to Catholic Relief Service is a much harder job than the Notre Dame job. This is a wonderful place. I have a wonderful team. We have a lot of momentum. We have wonderful students. And our environment is not a very difficult environment. In terms of financial resources, Notre Dame has managed its resources very well. It's not an environment full of unpredictable problems, just enough to make it interesting. And to go to Catholic Relief Services, it's like, my gosh, we're dealing with a lot of external variables where there's no control. The economy, US government funding, staff security in these countries, issues, whether it's in Haiti or Sudan or Syria or Jerusalem or Palestine. Those are really tough places politically. Dealing with emergencies, you don't know where they come, how they come, raising money when emergencies are right there. So it's a much more sort of difficult, uncertain type of environment. If I think that I'm just going to do it by myself, I wouldn't have taken the job. It would be nuts for me to take the job. I've never been international relief to go and step up to this. But in the end, I decided that it wasn't just me who was doing the job. This is really God's work. God said it must be done to take care of those who are vulnerable and those who are poor. He didn't say you have to do everything. He didn't say I have to save the world. He just said do your best. Right? I mean, that's each of our part is to do our best and to believe that this work is done with God. As Father Hesburgh says, say, come Holy Spirit. It is really in that spirit, the sense that God is with us. And I brought another visual aid. Don't have one for everything, but I brought my Blessed Mother statue, which is in my office, the Yardro. It's blessed by Father Hesburgh. We actually give that away as a memorable present when we have special guests. And I want to say very often, I would start my day at the grotto, and I tell the Blessed Mother, I said, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Blessed Mother, this is a work day. We all need to show up for work. It's true, I said, we just all need to be there dealing with this. And I actually attribute our ranking to the Blessed Mother. A number one ranking has some randomness in it. You can't just earn the number one ranking because it's like a football team. You could be the best team, but that day, if somebody stubbed their toe or bumped their elbow and they're off, the greatest team, but you don't control everything. You could run a survey, and that day there are 10 people who are really mad after they got a grade that they didn't like. And they fill in a survey and say, I really hate this place. Well, that's it. So you could say we are a pretty good school. We are in the top tier, whether it's top 5, top 10, whatever it is. But the number one ranking, there is beyond just hard work. It requires hard work, but there is an element of the spirit with us. I remember the year when I was number 2, we were number 2, and everybody said we would not be number 1. And I believe it, we would not be number 1. I don't know why I believe that. I thought we were a Catholic university, we would always have to be humble, that the Blessed Mother would not want us to walk around with a big head. So I was at Mass. I think 5 o'clock is the ranking. And the ranking takes like 30 minutes to count down. They torture you. They start with number 20, and they count up to number 15, and they have a pause to have dialogue, online, as if anybody really wants dialogue, all right? And then they count another one. So it's a long, drawn-out, like 20, 25-minute process where they just torture you. So our staff they were hovered around the computer, and I went to the Basilica for 5:15 Mass. And at Mass, I was making peace with God again. And I decided that God, so long as we don't drop below number 7, I would be okay. It dropped 5 places, people wouldn't be happy, but they wouldn't skewer us, and we don't have to explain to everybody why we tumbled, we dropped, So in my mind, I was trying to just sort of get used to the idea of number 7 and praying to God and say, please, help us, help me deal with that. When Mass was over, it was Father Paul, who has been my spiritual advisor. We went to the area where they're vesting, priests usually vest. I went there and I told Father Paul. I said, Father Paul, I'm going now to look at the rankings. I'm going to have my iPhone with me, and I will probably sort of collapse, and you will have to scrape me up from the floor, and then I will be strong, and then I'll go back and handle the team, right? They would be, sad too. So I said, okay, all right, you're going to see this part of me that other people don't get to see, and that is I'm going to fall apart, all right? And vestibule. So I pull out my iPhone and didn't put on my reading glasses, and I look at it, and the title said, it's time to party. We are number 1. So immediately I put out my reading glasses. I said, Father Paul, it says we are number 1. And it was just this disbelief, like how could it be? I've already negotiated with the Blessed Mother, don't make it worse than number 7. And then we're number one. And I said, we would never be number one because we're going to be humble. And, number one is all about ego, and we don't need that. And we know we are whatever we are. We don't need a ranking. And it was just so incredible. Father Paul went to Corby Hall. They were having dinner to tell them, and I went to the grotto. And really, it was just a sense of this is a journey with the Blessed Mother. And then year 2, we were all ready to lose it again because they said magazines have to sell magazines, and so they're not always going to put the same schools up there again. Well, so that day, I didn't want to find out about the rankings. It's like passing on your crown, right? I mean, the last day is the reign of the whatever it was. So I put it as far off as possible. We were sponsoring a seminar in Chicago, and finally, 6 o'clock or something like this, seminar ended, and there was actually a videographer there. He just turned off his machine. I turned on my cell phone, and it says, "We are number one." And for my staff, and I just jumped up. But I want to share that story. In the end, if I tell you we didn't enjoy being number one, there would be something wrong and dishonest about us. But I have just this sense that it is really sort of providential. We did our part, and I think that the Spirit helped us. And it gave us this recognition. I don't think it's just for ego. And that's why we say being number one is a responsibility. It's a shot in the arm, but it's a reminder to everyone that when we try to honor God, God honors those who honor him. And that in our journey and with this business school, that we did try to honor God. We've never tried to do the rankings and so on and so forth in some ways where we are apologetic about our mission. In fact, we just really incorporated our rankings. So that was my second point. The second point is to know that we are not alone, that God is really with us. The good things that we take on doesn't all depend on us, thankfully, but it depends on God, and just to have that trust. Father Paul often says, if God doesn't give you what you want, he gives you something better. And that is an important prayer to remember. The third point I want to make then is treat people well. In the end, I think people are the real gifts in our life. And I have to think, oftentimes when I pray to God for help, help comes in the form of people. It comes in the form of an opportunity that is made available by people. I pray for, we have various staff openings and so on. We say, where do we find such a person who is extraordinary, who has a deep sense of faith, and whom we could afford? Where do those people come from? And they're not in South Bend. I don't know who they are, and I don't know where they come from. And the funniest thing is that they have dropped into this college. Bill Nichols would agree with you. I mean, times when we just don't know where these people would come from, they show up. So people in our lives, our families, our friends, the people we just brush shoulders with, I think that those are really, really good gifts. And people are not perfect. Every one of us, we have our insecurities, we have good days, we have bad days, and I have those too. And so the ability to be there for each other. I think if you can stand up for other people, you would believe that others will stand up for you. If you care for them, you would know that they care for you too. And keep your friends for a long time. One of the gifts I have is I keep friends for a long time. I still get together with my classmates from first grade. We get together frequently, actually. I visit the Maryknoll sisters because they were my teachers from grade 1 to 12. People along the way, my friends at Purdue, and so on. You know what? You're too young, some of our students, but friends for 50 years, friends for 40 years, friends for the last, for you, 14 years of your life. Those are just incredible blessings. So don't take those lightly. And I think it is really important that you do not set up barriers where you look at other people by their titles or by their achievements, by your titles. Those things are really irrelevant. Never look down on people. There is a speaker who spoke at my MBA graduation, so that's how long ago. His name is Stephen Smith. He was a vice president of human resource at that point for General Motors. And he gave a wonderful talk. At one point, he asked people, he said, what is charisma? You know, what is charisma? What are some of the words you would give for charisma? Presence. I beg your pardon? Presence. Presence. Anybody else? Leadership. Leadership. Enthusiasm. Okay. Sorry? Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Okay. Inspiration. All right. So if you think about sort of someone who is charismatic, is someone who really can draw other people to themselves, right? Whether it's energy, enthusiasm, inspiration. But the definition that he gave was, charisma is the ability to take people as you find them, to like them for what they are, and to not despise them for what they are not. In another word, it's a person who has the capacity for other people. And if you have the capacity for other people, you will draw people to you. To like them for what they are, to not despise them for what they are not. Right? So I want to tell you one important trick that I've learned. I don't know if it's a trick, it's now a habit. I have to eat a lot of dinners with a lot of strangers. That's sort of my life. I go to dinners and put in whatever tables. And at first, I dreaded, another one of these dinners. There was a time when I have very good friends, and we will move the place cards around to the chagrin of the people who organize it, so that we all sit together and talk to ourselves. And laugh, and and a table that laugh louder than other people, but we do. We call each other the afternoon off and say, can you go early and just make sure that our place settings are where they need to be? All right? But that's a little sort of immature, even for a dean, all right? So that's kind of not very hospitable, particularly a lot of these strangers that I'm supposed to be sitting with, they are our guests for whatever reason. They're the university's guests. So somewhere along the line, I was probably shamed into not doing that anymore, all right? That's just not what a good host should do. So, okay, we'll just accept our table assignment. We'll sit with whoever is assigned to you and be a good host. And so along the way, I learned to ask a lot of questions. I am curious about people. And so if you put a person next to me, I could actually engage them. Hi, what do you do? Oh, do you have children? How did you and your husband meet? And what do you do in terms of volunteer work? What are you most concerned about in your community? And I could just go on and on and on. I have non-ending questions, all right? And then after that, someone would say, boy, she is really bright. Now, the truth of the matter is, I never said one thing. All right? I just kept asking the person about themselves. And somehow they would think that you're really bright. And perhaps the ability to draw out the best in other people is really an important way. So coming back to people is really, know how precious they are, know what a gift it is, know that it is not random that we're all here sharing this space and being on earth at this time together. And know that, when we pray to God for help, very often they come to us as people. So that's my third point, is really to treat people well. My fourth point is set high standards. That in everything you do it as well as you can do. And I brought another visual aid, my last visual aid. So this is a goblet. This goblet is actually called the Nobel. It is a goblet that is used in the toasting of the Nobel Prize celebrations. And it was for their celebrations from 1901 to 1991. So they always use this goblet, and it's called the Nobel. And I love it. I love this because it represents sort of the Nobel is given for sort of extraordinary excellence for a lifetime of work. We are talking about people who are at it for 30 years of their life studying something, to go to the level where their work is a contribution to humankind, and that this is the celebration of that type of achievement, and more important than achievement is that type of commitment and that type of contribution. And I think that's why it is important to set high standards. I guess I could be a bit of a perfectionist, but I often explain to people, like to students, if you don't pay attention to details, it's like having a resume, where the resume shows that you have done a lot of great things. You have a high GPA, you are double majoring, not that we advocate that you have won different awards, and you have done all of these service activities, and you know 3 languages, and you know various type of computer software languages, and you've done these internships. So a resume, which is perfect in terms of the type of experiences, the type of achievements, the type of skills. But if it has a misspelling, if it has a grease spot, it just absolutely undo the impression. All right? So you say, how could 21 years of work be discounted because of 2 spelling errors? Well, it does. Right? And so the whole idea of setting high standards to your work is really to just sort of, there is an aesthetic of doing work well, of not being sloppy, of not going 97% of the way, and then the last 3% is sort of like, boy, this paper was such a pain to write, I am not going to proofread it. Wow, And more than just sort of what it reflects about you, it's about the respect that you give to that work. It's about the respect you give for the responsibility someone has put in your hands. It's about your way of honoring the people who are on the receiving end of that work. So good work doesn't just honors you, but it honors the responsibilities, that the work that you're charged to do, the people who give you that work, and also the people who depend on that work. And that truly there is poetry and aesthetics associated with work which is done well. And along with that, it is very important to not let people down. If people are relying on you, particularly in deadlines and your part to do, follow through. Don't let people down and keep promises. If you promise to deliver something, if you promise to be there, if you promise, know that your promise is about you. If you don't honor your promise, you do not honor yourself, you do not take yourself seriously, and you do not take the other person seriously. So that's the point about setting high standards. And the thing is that if you don't work at that level, you have no right to expect other people working at that level for you. Right? And I think that when God gives us our gifts, they're meant to be used well. And one of the phrase that Father Hesburgh always says is, mediocrity is not the way we honor the Blessed Mother. Right? And I use that line all the time because I set very high standards for people, and it's because I think we could reach it. So the final thing I want to say is that, my final point is that every day remember to laugh. There's nothing so very serious that we couldn't find something to be grateful for, that we could put a smile on our face. There is nothing that would be so devoid of humor and irony that we couldn't laugh at it. I think laughing is the best way to acknowledge that whatever difficulties we are facing, whatever challenges we are facing, that indeed there is a better day, that indeed we are not alone struggling in this, that there is joy. Because if we believe in God, we believe that there is joy. If we believe in God, we know that there is hope. If we really have faith, we know that we're not alone. And because of that, we owe ourselves a good laugh and also to make other people laugh. And that laughter, I think, is the best way to say thank you. You know, if we laugh, if we can laugh, that's the way we give thanks to life, right? And Meister Eckhart actually said, if the only prayer you ever say in your life is thank you, that would be sufficient. And I think if we could really say that, there is a sense of that joy and its ability to sort of find the humor. And so as I end, so my 5 pieces really is, number 1 is, don't be afraid of the adversity. I know many of you are going into a difficult world. Don't be afraid of that, and don't be afraid of the responsibility that you might have to carry in helping your families. The second one is, you're not afraid because of faith. Cultivate the sense of the presence of God and know that this is a God who loves us just without bounds. And we're not just left here to struggle, right? And so the second thing is really be sure to have that faith. The third thing then is treat people well. The fourth thing is to set high standards for your work. And the fifth thing is to enjoy. And so I just want to share with you a last poem, and so that we could open up if there's some 15 minutes for comments and questions. And this is a poem from Doc Hammarskjöld, and I don't think I need my glasses. And he says, to love life and men as God loved them. For the sake of their infinite possibilities. To wait like him, to judge like him, without passing judgment. To obey the order when it is given, and never look back. Then he can use you. Then perhaps he will use you. And if he doesn't use you, what matter? In his hand, every moment has its meaning, its greatness, its glory, its peace. So I just want to say thank you very much for sharing this evening with me. You honor me by being here, and go Irish. And I just want to say it is true that part of the reason for taking on this challenge is I can't really ask the students to do that, to step up when they're called, if I myself cannot step up. It became no longer sufficient to say that we train our students to go forward, and that when the invitation came to me, it was important to step up. So I just want to say in this sense, many people would say that our new faculty comes to love Notre Dame because of the students. Then the students are very important in teaching us why this place is special and what makes it special. And I think in this way, if not for my 15 years here, if not for the incredible desire to be authentic to the students, I wouldn't have the courage to do this. So I just want to say thank you very much, and keep me in your prayers. Any comments, any questions? I don't have answers, you know, every life finds its own answers, but any particular comments? Go ahead.
I'd just like to say I have never heard you speak before. I've heard many always good things about you, and I found it very inspiring.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody else? If not, I think there are cookies and punch in the atriums here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry, just one quick thing. On behalf of the undergraduate student body, we would like to officially thank you with a plaque of this resolution that was passed in the Student Senate yesterday, and it reads, pardon the language, whereas Carolyn Woo has served well and faithfully as the Dean of the University of Notre Dame's Mendoza College of Business for 14 years, whereas the Mendoza College of Business is frequently recognized as the leading business school in ethics, education, and research, and the college reached the top of Business Week's undergraduate rankings under Dean Woo's leadership. Whereas Dean Woo maintained a strong moral and ethical standard at the core of the Mendoza College of Business throughout her leadership as the Dean of the college, whereas Dean Woo's service to the university focused on educating the heart, reminding us that as the #1 undergraduate business school, we have a responsibility to our society and to the common good, whereas Dean Woo has demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to undergraduate education and sends over 500 undergraduate students into the business industry every year carrying a message of integrity, whereas Dean Woo constantly pursues excellence and will continue to embody the spirit of Notre Dame as she becomes the new CEO of Catholic Relief Services, and whereas Dean Woo's contributions to the University of Notre Dame have and will continue to have lasting effects on the university and its student body, be it resolved that the undergraduate student body of the University of Notre Dame thanks Dean Carolyn Woo for her exceptional and loving service to this university, and resolved that the undergraduate student body of the University of Notre Dame wishes Dean Carolyn Woo the best of luck in her future role as the CEO of Catholic Relief Services and in her continuation of service in God's name. So,
thank you.
Yes. And in addition, we have made a small donation to Catholic Relief Services on behalf of the students. So thank you so much for your service to the university, Dean Woo. We have been blessed to have you. Please come back frequently, and good luck in the road that lies ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much.